Let me walk you through the next three carbohydrates that pose serious health risks. Not long ago, I covered what I consider the single most harmful carb out there, and that video reached a massive audience. The response was overwhelming, with countless viewers asking me to dive deeper into other problematic carbs they should avoid. So today we're going to examine three more concerning options, and here's what makes this particularly troubling. Two of them are actively promoted as wholesome alternatives. People consume these daily under the impression they're making smart choices, when in reality, they're doing significant damage to their bodies. Let's start with the first one, agave syrup. Walk into any natural foods market and you'll spot it positioned right alongside the raw honey. You'll see those attractive labels touting organic certification, plant-based origins, all those appealing buzzwords. But this sweetener is about as far from beneficial as you can get. Here's the deceptive part. Because it ranks lower on the glycemic scale, many assume it's a safer option. What they don't understand is that agave contains between 80 and 90% fructose. That concentration is absolutely shocking. You'll encounter it at trendy smoothie shops, upscale grocery stores marketing themselves as health-conscious destinations. The problem runs much deeper than most people realize. Fructose operates fundamentally differently from regular glucose. Think about glucose for a moment. Every single cell in your body can process it and convert it into energy. That's not how fructose works at all. Your liver stands alone as the only organ capable of metabolizing this particular sugar. So when you're pouring agave into your morning tea or drizzling it over your yogurt, you're essentially forcing your liver to handle an enormous metabolic burden all by itself. The way your liver processes fructose bears a striking resemblance to how it deals with alcohol consumption. With glucose, the workload gets distributed across your entire system. With high fructose intake, your liver takes the full hit, and the stress on that organ becomes immense. Consider this perspective. The notorious high fructose corn syrup that everyone loves to criticize contains roughly 55% fructose. Agave blows that out of the water with its 80 to 90% concentration. When scientists conducted controlled studies comparing various sweeteners in laboratory animals, the group receiving agave showed the most elevated triglyceride levels of any sweetener tested. Why? Because the fructose was being directly converted into fat within the liver. These weren't marginal differences. We're talking about the highest readings across the board. What really frustrates me is how agave gets marketed using that low glycemic claim. It's fundamentally misleading because while it might not spike your blood sugar immediately, it wreaks havoc through indirect mechanisms. It drives insulin resistance at rates that actually exceed plain table sugar. So instead of hitting you through the front door with an immediate glucose surge, it sneaks around back and gradually destroys your metabolic health. It damages liver tissue, promotes fatty infiltration of the liver, and cranks up insulin resistance systematically over time. There's another consequence worth mentioning. Fructose metabolism produces uric acid as a byproduct. If you've ever experienced gout or have elevated uric acid levels, consuming agave will trigger serious problems. Excess fructose translates directly into excess uric acid, which crystallizes in your joints and causes those excruciating gout attacks. Beyond that, it contributes to arterial damage and cardiovascular dysfunction. Here's something that should make you pause. A major research institution dedicated to glycemic studies spent 5 years conducting clinical trials on agave in human subjects. After all that time and investment, they made an unprecedented decision. They completely halted all future research and formally prohibited agave from appearing in any food or beverage product they would certify. 5 full years of human trials, and the conclusion was so damning they had to shut it down entirely. You would expect major diabetes organizations to sound the alarm about this, but they remain conspicuously silent. The likely explanation? Follow the funding. These organizations receive substantial financial support from processed food manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies, so speaking out against a popular sweetener doesn't align with their financial interests. People frequently ask me whether agave is essentially the same as honey. The answer is absolutely not. Agave undergoes heavy industrial processing, and the final product actually contains more calories per serving than regular table sugar. So you're not even getting the calorie reduction that some people assume comes with it. Now let's move to the second dangerous carb. You're probably expecting me to say soft drinks, but I'm actually going to focus on fruit juice. That freshly pressed orange juice sitting in your refrigerator with the label proudly declaring no added sugar. Let's break down what's really happening here. First, understand that commercial juice undergoes pasteurization, which means it's heated to high temperatures. That processing destroys most of the naturally occurring vitamin C, so manufacturers add it back in as synthetic ascorbic acid, typically derived from cornstarch through a chemical process involving sulfuric acid. Sure, they might not pour extra sugar into the bottle, but the naturally occurring fructose content is staggering. If you measure out 1 liter of typical fruit juice, you're looking at approximately 66 grams of fructose. Compare that to an equivalent amount of cola, which contains around 62.5 grams. Think about that for a moment. The supposedly healthy beverage you're giving yourself or your children actually contains more fructose than soda. You might be wondering how juice could possibly be worse than soft drinks. Let me explain the behavioral and physiological differences. When people consume soda, they typically sip it slowly over 20 to 30 minutes. Juice consumption patterns are completely different. People tend to gulp it down quickly, sometimes finishing a full glass in under a minute. That rapid consumption causes a massive, immediate spike in blood glucose. But more importantly, all that fructose floods directly into your liver with no delay. The damage begins immediately as your liver scrambles to process this overwhelming fructose load. Juice represents a highly concentrated extraction from whole fruit. When you juice an orange or squeeze grapes, you're removing all the fiber and leaving behind concentrated sugar water. That fiber serves a crucial purpose in nature. It slows absorption, moderates blood sugar response, and provides satiety. Without it, you have nothing buffering the metabolic impact. Our bodies evolved to consume fruit in its complete whole form, not as a refined, fiber-stripped liquid. The processing fundamentally changes how our bodies respond to it. Here's something fascinating about fructose. Research has shown it can alter the expression of approximately 900 genes in your brain. That's not a typo, 900 different genes. The problem with fructose metabolism is that it lacks adequate feedback mechanisms. You don't get that sensation of fullness or satisfaction. You can consume enormous quantities without feeling like you've had enough. This explains why people can drink products sweetened with high fructose corn syrup in massive amounts and still feel hungry. The normal satiety signals don't function properly. This becomes especially concerning with children. Many parents operate under the assumption that juice represents a healthy beverage choice for kids. They encourage their children to drink it, sometimes multiple glasses per day, completely unaware of the metabolic damage they're promoting. When you extract the juice from an orange or any fruit, you trigger essentially the same biological cascade that occurs with soft drink consumption. The physiological response is nearly identical. Now we come to the third problematic carbohydrate, and this one carries official endorsements. Your physician might actually recommend it. It's been featured prominently in dietary guidelines for half a century. Despite all this institutional support, it spikes your blood glucose faster than pure table sugar. I'm talking about whole wheat bread, the kind that supposedly promotes cardiovascular health. The packaging claims it's an excellent source of dietary fiber, which turns out to be misleading. It provides only modest amounts of fiber, and that fiber contains something called phytic acid, which actually binds to essential minerals like zinc, copper, magnesium, and calcium, preventing your body from absorbing them. Beyond that issue, whole wheat bread ranks higher on the glycemic index than straight table sugar. Let that sink in for a moment. What exactly is bread made from? Starch. What is starch at the molecular level? It's chains of glucose molecules linked together in long sequences. These glucose chains break apart extremely easily during digestion, and suddenly you've got pure sugar flooding into your bloodstream, causing a dramatic spike. There's a specific term I want you to understand: amylopectin A. This particular form of starch behaves very differently from other starches you might encounter. It converts to sugar and enters your bloodstream faster than almost any other carbohydrate source I can think of. Research has demonstrated that consuming 2 slices of whole wheat bread will spike your blood sugar higher than eating a candy bar. Those 2 slices deliver the equivalent of 6 teaspoons of pure table sugar to your system. If you've ever actually examined the ingredient list on a loaf of whole wheat bread, you'll notice it's not just wheat flour. Manufacturers add a long list of additional compounds. You'll find maltodextrin, various forms of added sugar, preservatives to extend shelf life, dough conditioners to improve texture, and monosodium glutamate, among many other additives. The ingredient panel reads like a chemistry experiment, not a simple food product. Since we've spent considerable time discussing fructose today, I want to circle back to those 900 brain genes affected by fructose consumption. Some compelling research has emerged showing that omega-3 fatty acids, specifically the DHA form found in wild-caught fatty fish like salmon and sardines, can actually reverse the genetic damage caused by fructose across those 900 genes. In practical terms, this means the more fructose you consume, the more DHA you need to counteract the damage. Of course, the optimal strategy isn't trying to offset harm with supplements. The best approach is simply avoiding these problematic foods altogether. Stop purchasing agave syrup, leave the fruit juice on the store shelf, and yes, stop buying conventional bread. If you enjoy bread and don't want to give it up entirely, you can absolutely make your own at home using alternative flours that don't cause these metabolic problems. There are excellent recipes available using almond flour, coconut flour, and other low-carb alternatives that won't devastate your blood sugar or damage your liver. These homemade versions taste genuinely delicious, and you'll have complete control over every ingredient that goes into them. Making the switch might seem challenging initially, but once you understand the real impact these three carbohydrates have on your long-term health, the choice becomes much clearer. Your body will thank you for eliminating these metabolic disruptors from your daily routine.